Hey, everybody. I'm going to walk you through some of the ways that we can use video in Unity and how you can begin to think about incorporating that into your projects. Just a quick note, I'm back on my other PC. I did a couple videos on my laptop. I'm trying some different kind of proportion size settings here. So let me know if this is easier to read. And if you're able to watch these, even though I'm filming on a wider aspect ratio, if you're able to see them okay on YouTube. If not, I'll just keep experimenting. So what I've got here, this is our base kind of template for the class. Again, your layout may look a little different than mine. That's okay. But suffice it to say, what I've got here in my scene is just a plane that we can teleport around on. Got a teleportation area on it and an XR origin in my base locomotion stuff to make sure that works. What I want to show you is 3 different ways we can use video in Unity. The first way is just to straight up bring video into the app and use it as just like, sort of a 2-dimensional visual component, right? So what we need to do is create an object that we can put the video on. That makes sense? So it's basically like we're making a TV or something like that, right? So let's bring in, we'll bring in a cube and I'll show you a better way, but this is an easy way to visualize it. So let's bring in a cube and I'm going to rename this to video screen. And then I'm going to reset the transform over here so it's just easier to find. Okay. So we've got that. Look at my game view. You can see my cube right there. And let's just call this is our video screen. So in a way, I just mentioned, like, I'll show you a way to make this kind of make more sense or be easier or something like that. But this is also something cool you can do with primitives and just things in VR, right? You can create impossible or very difficult video projections, which in this case will be, let's make this so we can play a video that I have downloaded on all 6 sides simultaneously, right? So treat each one of these 6 faces of this cube as a screen. So how do we do that? Well, we need to make this cube a video player. It's super easy. You just go to add component and then type the video, and it's the only default thing you should have. It says video player. Okay, so we have that component now. It's added to our video screen. Let's walk through what you've got here. It says source, where the movie is going to be read from. It says video clip and URL. Unless there's a very specific reason why you have to stream your video, you should download it and do it on the system. Though we could talk about maybe some edge cases where you might want to stream it. And it's going to ask for your video clip. This is where we're actually going to put the clip. Play on awake. This is just like remember audio from a couple lectures ago. If you're watching this in order for CTK 460, it just means that it's going to play as soon as the game starts. So as soon as it fires what's called the awake method, which is literally like the first thing the thing does, your video will start playing. You may or may not want that, right? You may want to be able to toggle it on and off or use controls or something like that. But for a demonstration, we'll just leave it so it plays on awake. Wait for first frame. This is really good. Just reading the tooltips here for you, but to explain them. Wait for the first frame to be ready before starting playback. When on, the player will only start increasing. Player time will only start increasing when the first image is ready. When off, the first few frames are going to be skipped while the clip preparation is going. So it's like there's going to be this very, very small sort of like millisecond or 2 window at the beginning where it's going to delay, right? And it should be ticked on by default. There are reasons why you would want it ticked off. This will ensure that it may start just slightly late, but it will make sure that all the frames are lined up. Again, there's like edge cases where you might not want to do that. Loop. Do you want this thing to loop or not? I'll tick it on just in case we want to watch this for a little bit longer. And then skip on drop, allow to skip frames to catch up with the current time. I always leave this on, especially for Quest, because you're dealing with a smaller amount of system memory, like RAM, and that's what you're primarily going to be stressing with videos. And then playback speed, right? So you can play back how fast it's going to go, right? You can leave it at 1. That's your normal default, but then you can decrease it all the way down to 0, or increase it up to 10 times the speed. Again, it might be cool to play with those different options if you want to speed things up or have the user be able to speed things up. All right, so here is where it gets really interesting. Where it says render mode, material override, or all these other options, right? The ones that we're going to be talking about today are material override and render texture. For what we're doing here, let's leave it at material override. though, when we look at a couple other options of where you can project video in your scene to another object, we'll use render texture. What material override means is it's going to grab the renderer, which is this thing up here, right? And it's just going to play the material or play the video on that. It's going to basically, like I said at the beginning, it's going to create a video screen on each one of these faces using the material, this thing, the default one, as the base of that. So you can imagine it's like a screen, like you drop a movie screen for a projector, right? And then they're playing the video on that movie screen. So you can also imagine, right, that some movie screens, right, the material is slightly different. It may absorb more light, or it may reflect more light, right? And you can get these very different looking experiences based on what material, right, your projector is made out of, right? The screen is made out of. So for that, just to keep that in mind, let's actually change this from the default so we have a little bit more control. Because if you notice, if you leave it at default, you actually can't change any of these parameters. So I'm just going to make a material down here. I'm going to right click, create, and then material. I'm just going to call this video. And it's exactly the same as the default right now. It just allows us now to be able to slide these things around. So under video screen, instead of default, I'm going to drag in the video. And now, all we can do now is like edit these. Okay, so what this is going to do is when we drag our video clip in here, it's just going to play it on the mesh, on the video, or sorry, on the material. So let's grab a video. I've downloaded a few, and you can bring in your own, obviously. But if you want these ones, just let me know. The things that are important here, this is an MP4. And generally for Quest, you can have a couple of things up to HD running. So 2 or 3 HD videos is usually fine. One 4K video is usually okay. You notice too, I'm getting these like kind of warnings in here. Most of these can be ignored. You're going to get lots of random ones because it has to do with how your videos are encoded or whatever. So if you get stuff in here that we need to work out, just let me know. But these ones are pretty benign. But anyways, you can have generally a few, if you're thinking about like having surround video, a few 1080p videos playing simultaneously and the Quest won't freak out. One 4K video, maybe one 4K and a 1080p. And you're gonna have to sort of dial it in and check it. I know I've tried to run 2 or 3 4K videos at once and it just doesn't work. Like it's way too much data for the Quest to process. So just keep that in mind. But I'm gonna grab this one, this like, I just downloaded this like abstract sort of animation here by using the internet and Googling it. And all I'm going to do now is associate this MP4 with this video clip. This is on my video screen over here. So boop, there we go. That's it. Okay, so now if we hit play, you should be able to see in the play view the video playing. And it crashed. Sweet. I'm just going to leave this in. I'm just going to load that up again. Unity is awesome. I've probably said it before. Unity is trash, but at least it's our trash. So reload, just make sure to save periodically while you're doing your homework because stuff happens. If this is like a bug, this would be cool to leave in. Occasionally, right? I have to reset it myself because I did not save. Occasionally, you're going to find bugs with things that you bring in, right? I'm just retyping this as I talk. You're going to find bugs, like maybe a video, like a file or like an extension is causing Unity to freak out. And I can't anticipate those things. Like these are just going to happen probably. So if you find stuff like that happening, like you just consistently are seeing this crash loop, just let me know. We'll investigate it together. Okay, reset that up here. And then I'm going to go grab that video again, and I'm going to hit save, Control S, and hit play, and see if it crashes. It looks like it's not crashing. Excellent. Okay, cool. So you can see this here. I'm not jumping into VR just because it doesn't matter. But this is what it's doing, right? It's playing the video on each face, which is kind of cool, right? Again, impossible. You could have like this, if I go in really quickly, add a grab. I can start grab interactable and jump into VR. Now I can pick that up, right? Which is kind of cool. You can pick up like a 6-sided video cube that has some utility interest to it. Whoop. Whoa, it's really big, but yeah, so there you go. That's kind of neat. Ah, I'm throwing movies. Okay, which is kind of cool. Something I think is really interesting that always looks kind of cool is to use a sphere or something like this instead of a cube. The cube is easy to see like the screens, right? But if we were to use a sphere, this again, I'm duplicating this really quickly, what we just did, but just making another video player and then adding this to it. Grab interactable, and I'm going to size this down because that's way too big to grab. Same thing here. Oops. There we go. And then hitting play. The spheres look really cool because you have this wraparound screen. It's something that really is kind of impossible in reality, right? Unless you get like a OLED screen that can sort of bend, I guess. There you go. Kind of thing. It looks sort of cool. Something you want to look for, hopefully you guys can hear me over this, is you can look where the repeat starts or like the bend starts, but this one's like really good. And there's random, there it is. You can see it there, right? But like for the most part, it's pretty good. It's hard to tell where they did a really nice job like wrapping it. Little tiny repeats. Anyways, super cool. And just for your sake, at least in PC mode, when I was tethered here, that was running fine. For to build it, you want to check and see if that's stressing the system too much or not, but I think that should be okay. Okay, so it's a super benign, like easy way to drop video in. You're probably going to also want to create screens at some point. And I mentioned way at the beginning of this chat, I was like, okay, we'll just use a cube, but I'll show you the better way to do that. The better way, right? Showing you here, I'm going to turn the rigid body off here, just so I can have this. I'll take this off here and take the rigid body off. And I'm just going to make this into a screen, basically. So I'm going to pick this up here and just stretch it out, right? Or rather, I can do it. This is just better. 2, and then like 3, something like that. This is really big, right? I think what the aspect ratio, I'm going to look it up for that video is, but anywho, let's put it over there or something. And let's actually invert that because I think I want it to be, oops, and 1, 3, 1. Sorry. 3. No. Sorry. I'm trying to make it look a little bit more square because I think that's more like what the ratio is. Anywho, doesn't matter. What I wanted to show you was if you say, even if I just squish this down, right? And you're like, okay, I'm going to make a TV like that, right? And you got this nice little panel you're going to play the video on. It'll play and it's going to look basically fine here. But what's interesting is it's still going to force it to render on the sides like this, right? No matter what you do, because this is a 3-dimensional 6-sided object. And you may not want that. It actually looks kind of weird where you get these like artifacts of everything being squished down. The way you can get around that and make what you would consider like framed things, like, sort of like a framed piece of art. Oops, I deleted my wrong one, is to use a plane or a quad. So let's grab a quad. And I'm not sure if we've talked about these in class or not, if they came up specifically. But a quad is great. This is one of the faces from the cube, which means it's a 2-dimensional object that only renders towards the camera. So it doesn't have a back. These are great. They're invisible from one side by default. And they're infinitely thin, right? They're 2-dimensional. So if we were to make this into a video player, right, and assign our clip to it, loop, and hit play, it'll be just flat, right? So you don't have that issue, right? You could still get this to seem like it's 3-dimensional. And this is where I said, like, you could make a frame or something by using a cube and using the cube to add three-dimensionality to it. So like you do like this or something, this, and then we're going to child our quad to it. And I'm just going to reset the position here. Bring it out a little bit, maybe make it a little bigger. And now that's going to render just on the quad, but in front of the cube when I actually move it correctly. I put it inside the cube. There you go. So if you want like that idea of like a moving painting or something, that's the process. And I could walk you through that. I did that really quickly. If you want to back up and watch it again, you can, but I can obviously do that in class with you when we're working one-on-one. And I could see the kind of best of both worlds, right? You could make this a grabbable and you can like grab the frame and resize it or whatever, while still having that two-dimensional aspect of the video, like a screen, right? Okay, so that's one way, right, to bring in video. It's like, this is sort of the diegetic, like it's in the world, right? It's just like you're replacing the concept of a movie screen in our VR environment. Super cool. I would urge you to think like really outside the box with how you can use video. And I haven't even talked at all about like triggering this stuff, but that's not particularly challenging. If you want to trigger, play, pause, all those things, let me know and I'll walk through that. But you use the XR origin and your controls to do that. But try to think outside the box, like what is interesting in application of video, right? That you might not think about, right? You know, you could throw video, you could stretch it, you can have it be circular, bouncy, you know, like all kinds of really interesting things. Another way we want to look at video is using green screen. You can actually key out stuff. And you can do this live, which is what's really cool. So I'm going to grab a quad again, just a flat like screen. I'm going to recenter it. Oops, recenter it here. Like that. And just doing the same thing. I'm just adding a video player to it. There we go. And then I'm going to make a new material because I want to actually play with this material. So we didn't play with the other one, but we'll start showing some of that here. I'm going to call this video, but I'm going to call it green screen because I want to actually experiment with how do we use chroma keying, but at runtime, so while the editor is running. This is so you don't even have to key it out like in Premiere or something. So I'm going to associate that here, right? And then nothing happened, obviously, because now we just have this rolling here. Let's add a loop. And we have the setup for material override still, right? Let's add a video clip over here. And I have grabbed this video. It says Blonde Woman Upset 4. And this is just like went to Google, found video, like typed in free green screen like thing. But you're welcome to shoot this stuff. We have a green screen room and green screens for you guys to use. And I'll rename this to green screen video. Okay, so if I hit play here, what you're going to see, save, is just it rendering. You're going to see the green screen, the footage like shot like that, right? There's this woman that she's upset, right? But that's not right, right? We want to actually key the green out. We want to like pull out the green so we just see her. So how do we do that? Well, you have to use a shader. And shaders are, if you remember back to our discussion, the video on how materials work, right? Shaders are the code that sort of governs how visuals are computed, right? It's like the collaboration, the sort of code between your GPU and your visual components, like what's being rendered and how. Really deep topic, like lots of very interesting technical art stuff happening there. But you don't really need to know how. I just want you to know what. And if you want to dig deeper, that's totally fine. So what I've done here is I actually dragged in this thing called Chroma Key Shader. I'm just going to take the one out because it was duplicated from my downloads, but it'll recompile here. And this is a shader. This is a bunch of code. If you want to look at it, you can double click on it. It's going to open in your IDE, your developer environment. And if you want to start parsing through shader code, you're more than welcome to here. If you're interested in this stuff, dude, this is like, you can make some money being a technical artist if you learn shader code. But really all we're looking for here is that this one has this thing called a mask color. So we can actually take out the green. So how do we associate this, right? So that's all that code, right? It's great. You're like, I don't want to learn that. Totally fine. You don't have to. I have this for you. And then all we need to do is tell the material that the shader is Chroma Key Shader, not standard. So we do the drop down here. And then I think it should be under custom. If you import this, you go under custom and it says Chroma Key Shader. You click on it and there you go. Now this is invisible, right? And we hit play. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so it's masking out the wrong colors, right? By default, it's like basically her. Any kind of warm tones are gone. But actually, what we want, right, is green. We don't want her gone. So this mask color here, we want to get this to an approximation of green screen, and you don't have to get super close. Just like I put it to neon sort of green, and then you hit play, and we'll start playing with it during runtime. Here. Okay, so that looks pretty intense. And then there's this threshold sensitivity here, and then smoothing. So you can dial these in and then try and find the right green. Like I'm moving it around here. It's pretty close. Just do a little bit of transparency there. There, looks pretty good. Okay. So how do you save that? You can say, so if you know, right, if I hit unplay, right, that's all going to go away. However, you can go to copy material properties here while you're in play mode. Hit copy, unplay, and then did that all stay? Yeah, everything but the material there stayed. Okay, so you can hit paste, and there you go, right? That's a new thing. I think that's got to be in 2021 or 22 that your materials are editable at playtime. However, you've probably noticed a lot of things that aren't, right? And it's not going to save. You could go in here and while you're in runtime, just go and copy the thing or write down like the properties and then let it roll. However, now it's kind of dialed in, right? So you hit play again, right? What's cool about this? Well, in VR, right, it's just a person standing next to you, right? It's really cool looking when you can create these, like say, full body videos of someone and key out everything except for them. It's like a hologram is standing there. And what's super powerful is that it's really fast. It's super easy. This is a low res video, and you can get these very cool effects using just standard sort of video techniques that probably many of you are familiar with. And that's super fun. It is extremely powerful, not in VR, but in mixed reality. So if the pass-through stuff that you guys saw from the world beyond, right? If you just start dropping in videos of people that are keyed out in your actual environment, it just looks like they're standing there, like it's just a person. They're still 2D, right? But you can put them in, and you can associate audio with them, positional 3D audio, and someone's having a conversation with you in your room, which is super cool. So that's fast and dirty green screen. I want you to see that as a possibility, and then if we need to explore that more deeply, I'm happy to do that individually with anyone. The third one I want to show you is setting up a 360 video Skybox. So you've probably seen these too, where you jump into VR and it's just a 360 video playing all around you. These are super powerful because you can capture a ton of data with a 360 camera, which we have a couple in CTK if you need to borrow one. You can capture a ton of data really fast. That's the power, right? And it's pretty easy to set up in Unity. The downside is that they are not interactable, right? So you're filming from a camera position, from a fixed position, all this stuff. You can't interact with it. You can't manipulate it other than play, pause, stop, rewind, stuff like that. And you can't move. That's the other thing. So it doesn't matter if you teleport around, your view of the 360 environment is always from the fixed position of the camera. So that's not great, right? It's very uninteractable. It's high immersion for visuals, low immersion for like agency. But that might not matter to you. Maybe it's just like you really want to drop someone into an environment and get data from them. But what do you see? What's interesting about this? Do you see any problems? There's lots of simulation scenarios that you may actually just want that. It's super fast. So how do you do that? Okay, so the way that 360 video works in Unity is that it's actually going to create this uh, sort of like bubble that you're going to live in. So imagine that you as the user are standing in VR, right? And then all around you is video that is streaming straight in at you. So it's this idea that like all around you in a 360-degree kind of dome or like sphere that you're stuck in, like a fishbowl, there's video playing in at you. And it's infinitely far away. So no matter what you do, you can't get closer to it, right? It's just filming in from like the sun, basically. And the way that happens in Unity is we're going to co-opt with Skybox here. So this like thing that we've had, and you guys have played around with them a little bit. This is in our materials chat about skyboxes and bringing in cube maps. This idea that you can have like six-sided imagery that's facing inward towards you. We just want to hijack that, right? And instead of having images, or in this case, this is a procedural skybox that's setting in for ground and horizon and the sun and all this stuff, sky. We're just going to rip that out and put a video player in. Okay, so I have one set up here, and I'm going to show you how to do this here. Okay, so first thing we want to do is create in our, we'll recreate this. First thing you want to do in your hierarchy is create a new 360 video player. And this is important too. This will be my second one, right? But you may want more than one for some reasons. Like if you want to have different settings already locked in for different videos, right, that you want to play. Just out of habit, even though it doesn't matter where this is, I'm going to recenter it to 0. So everything is nice and organized at our origin. Okay, so if you looked at this one, we need a video player on this. So let's add a video player. Boom, there we go. And it says video clip, none. So you're going to have to associate this with a video, and it specifically has to be a 360 video. So I have one downloaded here, which I call video 1, and I'm going to add that here. Okay, so this is where you might get these errors and stuff. Again, this is like, they're pretty benign, but if you get one that's like messing with your ability to make your video, then let me know. And same kind of stuff, I'll loop it, playback speed, all this stuff. However, we're not going to play the video on this thing, right? We want to play the video on the Skybox. We're not like playing it on a screen diegetically, like in our world, right? So how do we do that? Well, Unity has a system called, instead of material override like that, it's going to have this thing called render texture, which it's asking is, okay, well, if you don't want to play it on my like renderer, where do you want me to put the video? Like throw it onto. And it's saying, I need a texture. What's the target texture? And that's what we need to make. And I've made one here, but I'll show you how to do it again. This is a render texture. And you can make that like a custom one by going to create. And then all the way down in here, there's this thing called render texture. And we can name this, I'll just call it new 360. Oops. 360 video. Okay. So what is this? Well, it's the sort of like proxy, right? It's like, okay, if you're not playing it on my material, where am I rendering this to? But you're going to render it to this thing. Okay. And on it, you'll notice a few things. This is dimension 2D, size, anti-aliasing, and all this sort of stuff. Most of this you can ignore. However, what you can't ignore is it says 2D array, cube, 3D, and you're going to be very tempted to change these things, but you actually don't want to. You don't want to change it from here because we're actually going to determine the 3D-ness of it by using the Skybox. The one you have to pay attention to, though, is size. And it's the size of the render texture in pixels. So what's the size? And you may be asking, what should I click in there? What you need to click in there is the literal size of your 360 video. Okay, so this is going to be totally different for all of yours. The way that you figure that out on a PC is you go to your file that I have in Unity, and you right-click on it, and you have to go to Show and Explorer, and it's going to pop up your Windows Explorer, right? And then you right-click on that and go to Properties. And under Properties, you can go to Details, and these are the numbers, 4096 by 2048. Okay. You may know this just from filming it, right? Like if you go and capture this, you'll know what the dimensions are, what the aspect ratio is. However, if you go and download it, this is what you need to do. It's a similar functionality on a Mac, but you obviously don't go into Explorer, you go into Finder. And then I think it's like info is the toggle or the thing the menu system you open up, and then it's under there. Okay, if you do need help with Mac, just let me know. So 4096 by 2048, that's what I need to click in under here, size, 4096 by 2048. If you don't click in the right numbers here, it's going to look really weird. You'll see it, it just won't look correct. And that's it. That's all we need to set up here. Because all this is saying like, okay, where do I render this to? Okay, last step, we need a material. Because this, if you remember from bringing these in, if you were grabbing them off the asset store, your Skybox is a material. It's just a visual thing being rendered. So let's create one. You're going to right click, create, material, and I'm going to call this new 360 video. Again, I'm just like paralleling my ones I had made before here. And what you want to do is click on this, and we don't want to use the shader, right? We don't want to, this is not like rendering something flat or 3D in our world. We actually want to co-opt this like infinitely far away, rendering system. And to do that, you go click on here and you go to Skybox. And then you'll see all these different options, and there's one called panoramic. That's what you want. Okay. And you see it says, okay, spherical HDR, right? This is like rendering like this, and it says none texture. It's looking for a texture. And that's where we put in that. Okay. So we got that is rendering there. And the 360 video is there. So what we're doing, follow this logic, right? We're telling the video player, this is the video. What's the target texture? It's this. Great. Where is this going? That is going to our Skybox. It's going to our Skybox material. Okay. So all we have to do now is tell our Skybox what Skybox material we're using, right? And that's the one we just made. It's this. Like that. Okay. Okay. Sorry. My screen is so zoomed in here that it's like I can't see all my menus now. I'm sure this is like a first world problem. I'm sure you guys, if you're using a 1080p screen, you're used to doing this, but I'm just complaining. Okay. Anyways, we should play, and hopefully this should work unless I mess something up. There you go. So if you throw on the headset here, I should be able to look around. At this video, which looks pretty cool. Again, it's really vivid. Like you get a lot of immersion, like bang for your buck, right? I'm in a cave with water falling, and there's audio. The audio is still in 2D. We can talk about making the audio ambisonic or something, making it a little bit more immersive. But aside from that, it's like really fast, right? That's what you do. Boom, now you're in an environment. And some of you, I think I've said this in your project proposals, like, hey, have you considered maybe a 360 video and then like, using that for immersion and having some little interactables that work with that. Maybe one or two of you want to do that, and that might make sense. So that's the workflow. Any of these things, I just threw a bunch at you. Normally, this would be 2 or 3 days, like if we were doing this in this traditional class where we didn't meet once a week. But any of these things I walk through with you one-on-one if you find them interesting. And they all can be expanded. You can go deeper. Obviously, you can do like work in After Effects or Premiere to pre-render things and get some effects in, tons of stuff. Okay. So let me know if that's interesting to you. Many of you just won't use video at all, and that's totally fine. But if it is something you're curious about or you want to bring into your projects, that's the overview. And then we can talk through this in more detail in class. Cool. Let me know if you have questions. See ya.